Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are totally deconstructing a massive financial myth. I'm talking about the deeply ingrained idea that you absolutely must have $1 million in cold hard cash to achieve financial independence. Well, let's look at the data and see if there's actually a different, way more achievable path. All right, let's dive right into this.
So start by asking yourself a really straightforward question. Why do you actually want $1 million? I mean, when pressed, most of us don't just want to log into a banking app and stare at a screen with a 1 and 6 zeros. What we actually crave is what that money represents, right? You want the absolute freedom to pay your bills without having to trade every single hour of your precious life for a paycheck.
Now, this brings us to a pretty fascinating contrast. On one hand, we have this societal myth, money in the bank. It's that classic movie-style image of diving into a giant vault of coins. But on the other hand, we have the practical reality, which is residual freedom. And that just means having income continuously flowing in, whether you're working at a desk, whether you're sleeping, or whether you're out spending time with your family. The real goal shouldn't necessarily be hoarding a static pile of cash. It's really about creating residual income that produces true lasting freedom.
To really wrap our heads around how this works, we need to look at the math. So let's move right into section 1, the $1 million example.
$1 million. We literally spend decades stressing, saving, and scraping to reach this arbitrary number. But let's take a step back and look at what this specific amount actually does for you once it's fully invested.
Notice the percentage here, 6%. If you have that $1 million invested, a standard historical expectation is roughly a 6% annual return. And let's really emphasize this point, that 6% is the actual engine of your wealth. The $1 million, that's just the fuel. But the percentage is what actually makes the car move down the road.
Which leads us directly to $60,000. You see, a 6% annual return on $1 million equates to 60 grand a year. And here's the kicker. You didn't work 40 hours a week for that. The money itself produced it. It required exactly 0 hours of your daily labor. That generated income right there, that is the part of being a millionaire that people actually want.
And this brings us to a massive paradigm-shifting question. How can I build an income stream that produces the equivalent of what $1 million could produce? Think about it. Instead of stressing over accumulating a giant mountain of cash, you ask a much more useful question. If you can create an income stream that reliably spits out $60,000 a year without your personal labor, you've essentially created a virtual $1 million lifestyle. You might not have the million sitting in the bank, but you have the exact same freedom it was supposed to provide.
So how do we actually pull this off? Let's move from the philosophical math to section 2, 3 practical applications. Okay, here is our roadmap for making the jump to residual income. Step 1, stop measuring wealth by your bank account. Step 2, build income-producing assets. And step 3, define your freedom number.
Let's kick things off with step 1. Stop measuring wealth by the size of your bank account. Now, don't get me wrong, a huge balance is undeniably great to have, but it isn't the true objective. The real gauge of wealth is simply this: how much income can your systems produce without your constant daily involvement?
This dynamic gets super fascinating when we compare two different scenarios side by side. Imagine person A. They have $1 million sitting in cash, but absolutely no income-producing system. Now, contrast them with person B, who only has $500,000 in assets, but those assets reliably produce $50,000 a year. Person B actually possesses way more practical freedom. Person A is basically just slowly draining their pile of cash, while person B has built a machine that constantly refills their wallet.
Which naturally leads us right into step 2, start building income-producing assets. If you truly want residual freedom, you have to stop merely working toward a static savings goal. Actually, you have to start thinking like an architect. You must construct systems that keep yielding revenue long after you stopped actively tending to them.
So, what do these assets actually look like in the real world? Well, it could be a business, digital products, royalties, investments, or recurring subscriptions. Think about someone who builds a niche subscription newsletter, for example. That's a system capable of generating revenue completely beyond their individual working hours. Every single dollar of recurring income you build is another tangible piece of your personal freedom.
And that brings us to our third and final step, define your freedom number. Look, I want to reassure you right now, you absolutely do not need to be a billionaire or even a multimillionaire to be completely free. You just need to figure out what your ideal life actually costs.
Basically, your freedom number is the exact monthly income your assets must reliably produce to sustain your lifestyle without your active labor. If $5,000 a month covers your bills, your hobbies, and your travel, then your target isn't some stress-inducing $10 million mountain. It's simply an engine that yields $5,000 a month. That is a completely different, highly achievable game.
To sum up our core takeaway today, the goal is real freedom, not just saying you're rich. True freedom happens the exact moment your survival no longer depends entirely on your daily labor. Instead of spending decades blindly chasing a giant pile of money, you can start today by building the systems that give you the exact same result.
So I want to leave you with one final provocative question to chew on. What is your freedom number? Seriously, don't just close this explainer and move on with your day. Sit down today, look at your life, and calculate exactly what that monthly number is for you. Because once you know it, you can take your very first real step toward building your own residual freedom. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.